Welcome to Building the Future, hosted by Kevin Horick. With millions of listeners a month, Building the Future has quickly become one of the fastest rising programs, with a focus on interviewing startups, entrepreneurs, investors, CEOs, and more. The radio and TV show airs in 15 markets across the globe, including Silicon Valley. For full showtimes, past episodes, or to sponsor the show, please visit buildingthefutureshow.com.
Welcome back to the show. Today we have Marlon Nichols. He's a managing general partner at MaC Venture Capital. Marlon, welcome back to the show.
Yeah, it's great to be back. Can't believe it's been 5 years.
I know, it's crazy. I'm excited to have you back on the show. We had a really good conversation last time. You guys have invested in a ton more innovative companies, but maybe before we dive into all that, let's get to know you a little bit better and start off with where you grew up.
Yeah. So I was born in Jamaica.
Cool.
I lived there until I was about 7.
Okay.
And then moved to a place called Mount Vernon, New York, just outside the Bronx.
Right.
But spent pretty much every summer in Jamaica until I was about 15. So I kind of grew up in both places.
That's cool. Very cool. So you went to university. What did you take and why?
I went to Northeastern University. First, I thought I was going to be an architect. So I did that for about a year. And then when I realized I wasn't any good at it, started looking around for what I was going to do instead, and stumbled upon this major called Management Information Systems, which was kind of a blend between technology and business. And so, I've always been interested in tech. And, you're in school and you're in school because you want to be in business. Right. So I figured I'd give it a shot. And so I did. And it worked out. Northeastern has a co-op program where you spend 6 months of each calendar year in school and 6 months working.
Oh, that's cool.
Like an internship. Yeah. So I got to spend time at companies like Hewlett Packard and a bunch of others and really kind of see what it's like to work in tech.
Very cool. So you get out of school, walk us through your journey, getting an MBA up until what you're doing now with MaC Venture Capital.
Oh yeah. The Cliff Note version is, so I lucked upon a startup. It was a seed stage startup called Frictionless Commerce. Okay. And I joined them. I think I was maybe employee number 10 or 11, somewhere around there. And within a year, I was meant to be doing implementation of the software product for our customers. But that a year later, turned into, well, why don't you move to the UK with one of the founders and one other person and help us kind of grow the company there. And so did that, spent somewhere 2.5, 3 years in the UK doing that. Ultimately, the company was sold to SAP. I moved back to the US and decided I wanted to get into consulting. So first I was kind of doing post M&A integration work. My largest client at the time was the Blackstone Group. And then moved more into like just strategy consulting, working with media and entertainment customers like Warner Music and McGraw-Hill and a number of others. Ultimately decided that I didn't want to operate full-time and I definitely didn't want to be a consultant. And so venture was a thing that I found that was kind of right in the middle. And so went back to business school at Cornell. One of the reasons I chose Cornell is because it had a MBA-led pre-seed venture fund. Okay. And I was fortunate to hold the title of CEO of that fund for about 1.5 years of the 2 years that I was there.
That's awesome.
And that helped me to kind of network into the venture capital space and kind of learn how to do the job. At least the some of the table stakes aspects of doing the job. And then I graduated and joined Intel Capital. Spent 5 years there. Became a Kauffman Fellow and then decided I was going to start my own fund and the first fund I co-founded was called Cross Culture. I did that with Troy Carter. And then as as we were getting to the end of Cross Culture's investment period, started thinking about well, how do we make this thing bigger, right? How do we create a multi-generational institution? And for that, we needed a bigger team. We needed folks that were committed to this thing 100%, of every day. And so that's when I got with Mike, Adrian, and Charles of M Ventures, and we created MaC. So MaC, it basically stands for M Ventures and Cross Culture. We basically merged our teams and started working together in 2019.
Very cool. So what types of companies does MaC Venture Capital actually invest in?
Yeah, tech and tech-enabled companies primarily. We like to get involved at the seed stage. Seed stage for us means that the company has built a product and they're about to take it to market, or they have recently taken it to market. That's just where we feel like we can add the most value and where we can find alpha, right? Biggest opportunity.
Okay, very cool. Is there specific verticals you guys invest in, or it's just kind of anything tech or related?
Yeah, we consider ourselves generalists,
Okay.
but we're also thematic. We have this underlying thesis, or this thesis that underlines everything that we do. We call it cultural investing.
Okay.
And essentially what we're doing is we're identifying emerging behavioral trends and we do a bunch of research and trying to make a determination of which of those trends can actually become a part of popular culture. And then from that lens, we start to look at companies both on the enterprise side as well as consumer side, facing side. And are they building solutions that fit with where we see these behavioral trends going? So every investment that we make has to fit within that lens. But from there, it gets pretty wide or broad. But there are about 7 areas where we spend most of our time. Commerce and marketplaces, health tech, fintech, space technology or aerospace and deep technology is another one. There's an area we used to call like regulatory, but it's more about looking at really big old industries that haven't seen much technological innovation in a long time. But there's a major opportunity if you do add some technology to to that industry. It pretty much jumpstarts the industry all over again, and then you start to see these amazing growth curves of an already large industry. So we love looking at those. And then I've been doing a bit of investing in Africa,
cool.
just as a geography. I think portfolio there is now 5 companies.
Wow.
Across the several of the sectors I just mentioned.
Okay, very cool. So it sounds like you don't really necessarily invest in a certain geographic region. You're kind of open to anywhere.
Yeah, I mean, we're primarily the United States, North America.
Okay.
But I mentioned we do have those 5 Africa-based companies. I think we have one in Canada. We have one in Mexico City. So we're open, right? Like one of the things we always say is that talent is ubiquitous, right? They're great founders everywhere, solving amazing challenges, building terrific companies. But access to capital is not ubiquitous, and so we want to be that that capital that finds these amazing entrepreneurs that are building game-changing companies.
Sure. No, that makes a lot of sense. So I'm curious, you guys do some invest in diversity and visionary founders. Do you want to talk about why that's so important? Because we all know kind of the stereotypes of traditional kind of investing.
Yeah, I mean, great founders come in all shapes and sizes and colors and all that stuff, right? And that's something that we know to be true and believe wholeheartedly. And so while we're not a diversity fund by any stretch, but we do recognize that there's some amazing opportunities or really large challenges that need to be solved in diverse communities. And the best people to solve challenges are usually those that have lived through them, right? And so with that lens, we go out and we find entrepreneurs that are solving the challenges that we know of and really care about. And so that just approaching it from that with that lens, that's what helps us to get to a place where we have 69% of our of our current portfolio companies are founded by Black, Hispanic, or women founders, right?
Very cool.
You got to be open to it, and I think that's the challenge within venture is that folks aren't open to exploring opportunities outside of their immediate network, and aren't doing the work to understand where some of these really huge opportunities lie. And so we try to play in that space.
No, that's very cool. You guys also offer a bunch of services to the companies you invest in that I think a lot of traditional venture capital firms don't actually offer. Do you maybe want to cover some of those and why you think that's important?
Yeah, I mean, we're really super hands-on, or as hands-on as the founders will let us be. We try to be real partners to the CEOs and executive teams that we invest with. I'll just mention one that I think is a standout. Our backgrounds, right? So we had a former mayor of a major city in the U.S. We have a couple of former talent agents, consultant, and everyone has operated. And so in all those kind of services businesses, one key thing that you have to do well, is be able to tell stories, right? And being able to tell your story well as a startup has an outsized impact on how quickly you can grow. And so that is a unique skill set to us, in terms of looking to be different from other venture firms, is that we can really help our companies tell their story in an effective, succinct, and efficient way that resonates with their target audience. That's something that we hang our hat on, and we bet that we're better than most at.
Interesting. And well, I think that's very cool that you guys do that, because that's very challenging for anyone, right? And the fact that you guys are helping your companies with that, I think, is actually super important and actually probably helps them succeed a lot quicker. Is that fair to say?
Yeah. I mean, if you can communicate, the value that you are providing to a specific group in a way that resonates with them, they're going to be more inclined to try your product or your service than if you just have some kind of boilerplate language that doesn't specifically speak to who you want it to speak to. It's kind of common sense if you take it at its simplest form. But it's a talent. It's a skill to be able to do that well.
Hi there, and welcome to Wake Me Up, the podcast where morning people are made. I'm your host, Tyler. Wake Me Up is based on one simple fact. How you start your morning dramatically affects the rest of your day, both your productivity and your happiness. And Wake Me Up is designed to be a one-stop shop for a great morning. By using Wake Me Up and changing your morning routine, you can change your life. Instead of hitting the snooze button over and over, or scrolling through a sea of negative news and judgy social media, just press play on an episode of Wake Me Up. You can even start every episode from bed if you want. Most episodes blend mindfulness and meditation, some simple yoga or stretching, and send you off with a motivational bit. If it's morning for you right now, go ahead and pick out an episode. If not, I'll talk to you tomorrow morning. And either way, I hope you have an absolutely fantastic day.
Sure. Well, I think part of the challenge is sometimes when you're in the trenches building your product, you can't look at it objectively from the outside, right? And having somebody like you guys come in and say, okay, like you understand the product, but you can also look at it from that outside perspective to see where the holes are or what doesn't make sense. And because sometimes I think it can be challenging. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I think you can develop like blinders. So we love actually working with entrepreneurs that are constantly looking outside and are putting their customer first, or the needs and wants of their customer first, right? Because you can easily go down the road of, this is kind of cool, I want to build this, but you got to remember who you're building that thing for. So we love founders that have that mindset, and we feel like our job is to help remind them, of that mission, of that focus.
Right. No, that makes a lot of sense. So, what size of checks are you guys traditionally writing? Is there a range, or what can people kind of expect from MaC Venture Capital?
Yeah, so we target, it's more about ownership for us. So we target between 10 and 15%
Okay.
ownership. And so that could range from $1 million check in a very small round to, $2.5 to $3 million.
Got you. Okay. Very cool. So I want to maybe dive a little bit deeper into some of the companies that you've invested in. Do you want to talk about what they do and what made you actually decide to invest in them?
Man, there's so many great companies in our portfolio. Probably the one of the fastest growing startups over the last several years is a company named Pipe.
Okay.
We were in their very first round. They're now valued over $2 billion.
Wow.
But they came up with an interesting way for companies to grow their money without taking on dilution or a lot of debt. Essentially, if you have a contract with recurring revenue, it has value, and they're allowing you to trade the value of that contract in exchange for cash that you can then use to put back into your business and grow it, or fund your movie production or whatever it is. It kind of like on an exchange, right?
Oh, very cool.
And so we've seen startups trade their contracts on the platform. We've seen publicly traded companies trade their products, their contracts on the platform. So that's one that I'm so happy that we're able to work with those founders again, and they're building an incredible company.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Do you maybe want to give us an example of a couple of other companies?
Sure. Another recent investment is a company named Rares. And so Rares is fractionalizing sneakers, collectible sneakers,
Okay.
and then allowing you to trade on the SEC regulated platform.
That's
So
cool.
yeah, so sneaker culture is huge.
Totally.
Multi-billion-dollar industry at this point. And most people can't afford the really high-end sneakers, and definitely not the collectible ones. And so what Rares is doing is kind of like, if you think about a company that's traded on NASDAQ, they fractionalize it, right? You can buy shares of that company. So
Right.
they're allowing you to buy shares of these collectible sneakers.
Interesting.
And ultimately you'll be able to trade on the platform. You'll be able to buy and sell your the equity that you hold in these sneakers. And then ultimately, someone's probably going to want to buy the sneaker outright in an auction, and then everyone's going to get paid out that way as well. So no one's done this before.
Yeah, that's interesting. Totally new.
Yeah, and there's also a financial education aspect to what they're doing too. It's like they're introducing folks that traditionally haven't played on the or invested on the stock market. So they're attracting them through I guess a sector, an industry, or product that they care about or are interested in, and then teaching financial literacy through this process while allowing folks to generate wealth at the same time. So really interesting company, founded by Jerome Sapp, who's a former NFL player, also Harvard MBA.
Very cool. No, very cool. So I'm curious, because you guys do these seed stage investments when companies are pretty early on, what do you look for when a company actually pitches to you, or what advice do you give to companies that are looking for seed stage investment?
I mean, that's a big question because there's just so much. Probably the biggest thing is to know the market that you're trying to play in, and be able to properly articulate what's different about your strategy or your product, and how you'll sustain that differentiation. I think it's also important to demonstrate where you see the value in what you're building, or where you see how you think your customers will see the value in what you're building. Because at the end of the day, it's ventures about taking really big swings and generating significant returns. And so you got to have large market opportunities in order to have a chance at that.
No, that makes total sense. So when companies are pitching MaC Venture Capital, is there like a process they have to go through, or walk us through the journey from pitching to actually get investment? What does that look like?
Yeah, so you're going to start your relationship with one of the partners. We're going to start to get to know you and your team, and if we get excited about what you're doing, we're going to dig in and go through kind of a 2 to 3 week diligence process in most cases. And that looks like us evaluating the market opportunity, looking at the competitive elements within that market, and where you fit in, or your company fits in. It's a matter of getting to know you through professional references and that you provide, as well as back channel type of references. It's about talking to prospective customers, or organizations that you would be selling to or have started to sell to. It's all those things to just build a holistic view of the leaders, of the founders of this company, and the opportunity ahead of it.
Okay, no, interesting. So you guys wrote a piece about the state of, or you guys have written a bunch of pieces about the state of tech and culture, and why do you think kind of space is going to potentially be one of the big next things that we're going to explore as kind of mankind and human beings?
Oh yeah, I mean, for a lot of reasons. I mean, if you speak to anyone in defense, for instance, like national defense, they'll tell you that space is probably the number one place where they need to be spending, both for just being able to see what's going on, but to also be able to defend,
Right.
or attack. So that that's one. Communication, right? I think there are a ton that we can do around satellites and internet connectivity. If it's done right, from the extraterrestrial, right? There's just a ton of opportunity. There are things around climate change and impacting climate change that we can't tackle from terrestrially, right? We've got to go out there to try to solve some of those challenges. It's kind of like what you said before about founders and being inside of a problem and a solution, and not necessarily being able to get outside of that, right? You got to be able to get outside of the earth, look down on it to properly understand some aspects of it. So yeah, there's so much opportunity there, particularly around internet communication and defense.
Sure. Interesting. I also think too, I think at least most people at some point in their life, maybe it was only when they're a child, always kind of maybe dreamt of going to space, even just as like a tourist for like 10, 15 minutes or fly, like just, I think it would be cool, right? I think most people are fascinated by it, or just want to at least hopefully go into space for, even if it's for a few minutes at some point in their lifetime. Hopefully it gets cheap enough that, the average person can do that.
I think it will. We have a company in our portfolio called Stoke.
Okay.
They're doing pretty well, and they've built or they're building, I should say, fully reusable rockets.
Oh,
so
cool.
You have a lot of companies that have call them payloads that they want to get up into space, and they don't want to wait 2 months for the next thing. They want to have things go up this week, right?
Right.
And so almost think about it as like an Uber for enterprises that need to get things in orbit, small satellites, etc.
Well, very cool. So you guys at MaC Venture Capital seem to be pretty up on what's coming next and the trends and stuff. How do you guys stay on top of that? Is there like podcasts or books or news or courses that you are kind of, ongoing reading and listening to, or where do you, or how do you stay up on these trends?
So yes, we do all those things. We read all the things that probably everyone else is reading. But in addition to that, we have these amazing global networks of influencers, of global marketing agencies, etc. And we talk to these individuals and folks at these entities often, right, to get a perspective. And the thing is, when you start to hear something over and over again, right, that seems like a trend, and then from once we identify it, then it's about really digging in and doing the research and figuring out, does this thing have stay power? Is it real? Can it stick around?
Sure. Well, I think it's also because you guys don't really have geographical borders in the companies you invest in. You're open to different things happening in different parts of the world, right? And I think that gives you guys probably an advantage over some of the VC firms that only invest in, certain geographic regions of, say, America, right?
Yeah, I think the world is the Earth, I should say, is a big place, but it's also a very small place now because of the internet and mobility.
Sure.
And I think why would you want to limit yourself in that way? There are great companies that are going to be founded in a lot of different places on this planet, and I want to be a part of the next great thing that impacts people's lives in a very meaningful way.
Sure.
So I don't want to limit myself.
Sure. So most founders probably at this point are pitching over some sort of video conferencing app. Do you have any advice for people kind of pitching through the computer and instead of being in front of people these days?
No, I think it's still the same, right?
Yeah.
And it's actually, I'd argue, much easier for folks, raising capital to do it that way, because you can do so many more meetings, right? Because you don't have the travel involved. I guess the thing that's that could be missing there is that personal connection, right? Like you're always going to invest in people that you like, right? And so you got to figure out a way to build a connection, with that investor. That's probably the real challenge that comes with this. But again, if you're building an amazing company and you tell that story well, and you're building it in a very large market, you should be able to raise capital. And having these meetings virtually or digitally allows you to have a lot more of them.
Sure. So do you have any advice on how to build a relationship with venture capitalists like yourself or other partners at your firm kind of before an entrepreneur is ready to actually pitch and ask for money?
I think the only way that really happens is if we have someone in common that we both trust and respect.
Okay.
Because I mean, you want to say yes, right? But the reality of it is, like, we're all busy doing our things, right?
Sure.
Whether that means you're running your fund, helping your companies, spending time with your family, what have you, right? And so it's going to be rare that you're just going to carve out time to meet this new random person to connect unless you have a reason to.
Sure.
Right? And typically that reason is they're building something that that you might want to invest in, and so you want to get to know them and you want to get to know this thing that they're building. But if they're not doing that yet, and you don't have that mutual connection, like what's the rationale for connecting?
No, I 100% agree. I've heard kind of both sides of it, and it's like, for somebody like yourself on the VC side, it's like, well, we just need to talk when you're ready for money, right? Like, then we need to decide if we're going to go ahead or not, right? Like, that's interesting. So I'm curious, what other advice do you give to entrepreneurs? Because you got to see things that they're probably doing all the time that maybe you wish you didn't do, or on the flip side of that, things that you wish they would do more.
I think you just got to be authentic. Is the main thing, right? Know why you're building something. Appreciate what your strengths are. What your areas of improvement are. Know your plan for covering up, or not covering up, but meeting those shortcomings. Maybe that's in a co-founder or other hires or whatever. But just being genuine and transparent, I think it goes a long way. We can read through the non-genuine things pretty easily.
How do you know that or I get it's probably some sort of a gut feeling, but how do you recognize in somebody that they're kind of going to be in it for the long haul and the highs and lows, and they're ready to, take the 3, 5, 10-year journey to actually hopefully see this thing through to acquisition or IPO, or maybe just build it into a great business and keep running it?
Mm-hmm. You don't actually. It could be a 5-year stint for them. It could be a 3-year stint for them. What you care about is that they can take the company to the next phase, right?
Okay.
And that hopefully they're able to identify and hire talent, right? So that if they do kind of age out of the company or what have you, then that the company's not just going to go away, right? There are going to be others there. But we do look for that, that tenacity, that grit, right? The folks that want to drive a MaC truck through a cul-de-sac. And that comes down to, well, what's driving them, right? If it's just, I'm just doing this because I want to, get rich quickly, then all right, then you're probably not going to be a successful founder in this business. I mean, you
Right.
could be, but I think the stats are against you, or the odds are against you. It's like, why are you doing this, right? Have you been working in a space like we have a founder, one of our founders that reported directly to Elon Musk and was the top engineer on what they were doing with annotation for autonomous vehicles, right?
Right.
So he's well steeped in that challenge, and so he knows all the problems and genuinely wants to solve some of the things that he just didn't have the bandwidth, at Tesla to go and solve. So that's why he's building, his company, right? So that passion is there. He also, wanted to see more diversity in the folks that are working on this problem. And
Right.
so that's something that he was, truly passionate about, and you could see it in every action that he had taken up until that point, and as he spoke about it, right? So you're looking for things like that, right? You have a lived experience, that is meaningful to you in some way or for some reason, and you're going off and you're tackling this. Like another company, one of the African investments is a company that's basically giving patients, ownership of their medical records digitally through the blockchain, right? And this founder, the way he came to the challenge was, he had a friend that got a diagnosis from one hospital, and then ultimately got sick and was taken to another hospital. And by the time they, did all the things that you have to do to diagnose, it was too late, and his friend passed away. And so he was like, there's got to be a way to avoid that going forward, right? And so he started to build this company. So there, you look for the why, right? Why is this important to you? Why are you going to build it? And why should it be you, right? Why shouldn't it be someone else? And you listen to the reasons to those questions, and and you trust your gut.
No, that makes a lot of sense. And I think you brought up something that I find really interesting is just kind of, obviously you still probably consider first-time founders, but if somebody's been in a space for a number of years and they've kind of gone through the highs and lows and they decide to kind of build something on their own in that same space, it shows they're passionate because of their past, right? And I think so many people forget about that sometimes. It's like, what you've been doing the last 3 to 5 years might be just as important as what you're going to do in the next 3 to 5 years if you're trying to get investment to prove that you're passionate about whatever you're going to tackle in the future.
Yeah, maybe, right?
Yeah.
Maybe. Or it could be, a situation like the last thing that the last example I just gave, right? Where it was just a life event. He just happens to be a world-class engineer.
Right.
That, could think about that problem and apply a technological solution to it. But yeah, both things can be true.
Sure. No, I think that's great. So is there anything else or any other advice that you would like to give to entrepreneurs out there or aspiring entrepreneurs?
I'd say just know your market.
Yeah.
Know your market in and out. Because we talked about this earlier in the conversation. You got to know who you're building for, and you got to build something that that they genuinely want, or better yet, need. And then you have to understand how others have approached the challenge in the past or are trying to approach it now, and make sure that your approach is better in some ways, and you can defend your approach. But it all comes down to really knowing your market.
No, I think that makes a lot of sense, but we're kind of coming to the end of the show. So how about we close with mentioning where people can get more information about yourself, MaC Venture Capital, and any other links you want to mention?
Yeah, so our whole team, you can get to know us at macventurecapital.com, and we're on all the social media platforms as at MaC Venture Cap. And then for me specifically, all my handles are Marlon C. Nichols, and happy to engage on social platforms.
Perfect, Marlon. Well, I again really appreciate you taking the time out of your day to be on the show, and I look forward to keeping in touch with you, and have a good rest of your day, man.
Yeah, you too. Thanks for having me back.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, bye.
Bye.
Thanks for listening. Please visit our website at buildingthefutureshow.com to join the free community, sign up for our newsletter, or to sponsor the show. The music is done by Electric Mantra. You can check him out at electricmantra.com and keep building the future.